So I heard a story about a church in San Francisco. And it was the Sunday after Christmas, and the minister goes into the church and he's looking and he sees the nativity scene. And he noticed there's something missing from that scene. Everybody's there. The 3 wise men are there. The shepherds are there. Mary and Joseph were there. The only thing missing was the baby Jesus. So the minister was curious as who might have borrowed baby Jesus. We're going to use that instead of stolen. So baby Jesus is gone, and the minister thought, well, maybe somebody just moved him. So let me go look around. So he looks around some, and then he goes outside, and he sees this little boy. And this little boy has his little wagon, this big red wagon. And when the minister looked, he saw baby Jesus in the wagon. So he walks over to the little boy, and he said, where'd you get that doll? And he says, well, I got him out of the nativity in the church. He said, well, what made you want to take baby Jesus on a ride in the wagon? And he said, well, a couple of weeks ago when I was staring at the baby Jesus, I prayed, if you'll let me get that red wagon I want for Christmas, I'll take you for a ride. So true to his word, keeping his promise, and in gratitude, he's taking baby Jesus for a ride around the block in his little wagon. So the song that Eddie sang this morning, my brother, if I could take you for a ride in a wagon, I'd do it. I asked him to sing that in particular because that's a very special song to me, and I've never told him that. For 6 months, 2 years ago, it was a rough 6 months. Pretty much anything that could go wrong in my mind went wrong. And that's where everything stayed. Because sometimes when there's some physical stuff going on or there's some other things happening, we let it get the best of us in consciousness. And in my conscious mind, I started thinking of all these things that are going on. And I kept thinking, you need to pull away from this stuff. And I flipped on Alexa in my car, and I just said, play Eddie Watkins Jr. music. And that's the first song that came up. I Walk Away. Now, that song is a song of hope and a song of promise. But for me, for that 6 months, it was about me learning to walk away from the things that were my problems, from the things that I perceived were my problems. It was time for me to learn to walk away. So I played that song every day for 6 straight months, on my way to work every morning. I walk away. I walk away from the less than that somebody along the way taught me was a part of who I am. The part that taught me I will never have enough, I will never be enough, I will never accumulate all this stuff that the world tells us we're supposed to accumulate. You know what? I learned to walk away from those thoughts of lack. Reality is I don't lack for anything. I have a God and a source who has everything in the world, and thus I have everything in the world. It's God's good pleasure, Scripture says, to give us the kingdom. There is no lack. I learned to walk away from that thought of lack, to walk away from that part of what I thought was missing in my world. And I learned that as I woke up and got rid of each of these things that I perceived to be a problem, that the day really did get brighter. And as I learned to trust in that God of all of us, a God I'd been told about for 50 plus years at that point in time, a God that I knew well, but learning to trust that God was a different thing. And learning to know that when I heard that voice in my head that said, here's what you're going to do, and here's who you're going to be, and here's how we're going to do this, and I know it's God talking to me, and I go, all right, let's do that. Things change. You get to walk away from all the crazy. I got to walk away from all the thoughts that were in my head and the things I kept telling myself based on what I'd been told by everybody from my childhood to now. I can let that go. I walk away from that. And this morning I kept thinking, for Burning Bowl, what is it we need to think about? And for me, it came down to, what is it I need to walk away from this year? Woo. Thank you. At least some of us are being honest about where we are in this world. Because there's a lot of crap, that we need to walk away from. And that was the nicest word I could come up with at that moment. It just piles up all around us sometimes, and we need to get out and walk away from it. We need to move forward into our what's next. Because you see, if you listen to the song carefully, it's not just about walking away. It's about walking to. What's the next? That bright and glorious day, learning to trust in that God of all of us. That's where we're walking to. So as we think of Burning Bowl, and I want to make sure everybody did get your piece of paper. If you didn't, raise your hand and we'll try one more time to make sure everybody gets it. Okay, we need one in the back. So we want to make sure everybody has it. And as you're thinking about walking away, and as you think about that piece of paper that you have in your hand, what is it that you want to see symbolically burn in that fire that you passed when you came in? What is it that you want to see you let go of for 2023? What is it you're willing to walk away from? And notice I chose carefully the word willing, because it doesn't do any good to put something on that piece of paper that you know good and well you're going to pick right back up as soon as you walk out the door. That was a part of my 6-month process. Some of it wasn't that I didn't know what I needed to get away from. It was that I wasn't willing to move away from it. So as we think about moving forward and as we think about going on, the thing that kept coming back to me was some of the sculptures that I've seen as I visited different museums, and realizing that they started out as just this great big chunk of marble. That's all it was. A big old chunk of marble that somebody drug over to a place where they were going to carve it into something else and sculpt it into something gorgeous. Any sculptors here? My accountability partner is a sculptor, so I get to learn a little about it. And I learned that the sculptor can actually see in that chunk of marble exactly what they're going to carve. That amazes me. Because where they look at that chunk of marble and might see a huge elephant, I look at that chunk of marble and see a chunk of marble. Because that's where I am. That's different than that sculptor. But inside the chunk of marble that is each of us, we know who we authentically and truly are. And it's our job as we go through life to carve away, to chip away at that marble so that we find our authentic self, we find our true self. And then we have to walk away from what we chip off of that marble. I don't know about you, I can only talk about me, but sometimes I chip that marble away. And then within seconds, I reach down and pick it up, and I get me some Gorilla Glue and stick it right back on. But the key is to walk away, to let that go, to take that glued portion right back off, and to be grateful that I've been able to chip away at the different parts and get away to them. So some of the things that I've learned to chip away from are old habits, things that don't serve me anymore. Things that I thought were good because maybe I was taught that they were good. Things that I thought were good because they were fun. Things that I thought that they were good because they have served me for the first 40, 50 years of my life, and now I found out in the 60s it doesn't anymore. So you let those things go. You release them. You chip away at them, and you learn how to walk away from those things, those old habits. Lack was one of mine. Again, never lacked for anything in my life, but it was a part of my consciousness that I needed to let go of. Other things that were old habits, well, we won't discuss some of those, but some of those old habits that we all have, we know we need to let go of. They don't serve us. Did you know that almost 1/3 of the people in the churches I go to are in recovery? I find that fascinating. I find it fascinating that the people I know in recovery can do it. Because it ain't an easy thing to do. So I admire those people who've walked away from something that they felt like they needed at one point in time or another, and now know they don't. That is amazing for me, and that's something that I bless those people who can do. We can walk away from those old habits, those old things that are building up that don't serve our best and highest anymore. We need to walk away from the old stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. I don't know about you. I always say I have an 8-track in my head that's constantly playing because that was my generation. So I have that going 90 miles an hour in my head of this is who you are because your teacher said it's who you are, because your parents said it's who you are, your family said it's who you are. Just go down the list. Your church said it's who you are. My friends, you are none of those things. Get those tapes out of your head and redo them and tell yourself who you truly are. You are a child of the living God, period. There doesn't need to be anything else on that tape. Tell yourself that all day and see how it changes your day and how it changes your outlook on life. You are a child of the living God. You are love, period. You are God. Remember that part? You're the only plan there is. There is no God walking around the earth but us. We're it. Remember that part of who you are. Get rid of those old stories, old hurts. Sometimes when I fill out my piece of paper, I'll think I'm done. I've dealt with this. I've forgiven this. I've done my forgiveness work around this issue, and boom, here it is again. Well, why are we doing this again? Because obviously I didn't learn my lesson or finish what I was working on there. So if something comes up, put it on that piece of paper. Feel free to write while I'm talking. That doesn't offend me in the least. You put on that piece of paper exactly what it is you need to let go of and walk away from this year. And if it's an old hurt or an old excuse that you used for not doing something, write it down and let's move forward. Let's move into the promise of the song. Old dreams, old visions. How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were a kid? Most of us, truly. We at least know there's something we want to be. Now, if I ask how many of you are what you thought you wanted to be as a kid, I'm betting I'll get very few hands, but one or two, thank you. Some. You know what I wanted to be when I was a kid? I wanted to be a lawyer. Do you know why I wanted to be a lawyer? Because I like to talk. I figured that would give me a chance to talk all the time, and then I met with a lawyer and talked to him about what he did for a living and decided that was not the route for me. Did you know they actually read those books? You see them behind them in their pictures and things. They really have to read those things. Now it's on computer, but not in the old days. And I've told you before, I'm ADHD and dyslexic, so me reading that many books was not going to be a good combination. So move on to the next thing. And in the middle of determining what it was I was going to be is one of those times when I heard God say, here's what you're going to do, and here's how you're going to do it. And I fought tooth and nail not to do any of that stuff until I finally said, I surrender. We're good. And I still get to talk. So what else do we let go of? Things that we feel guilty about. Get rid of your guilt. I know that's easy to say and hard for a lot of us to do, but let that guilt go. If you did something 50 years ago, then do your forgiveness work around it and move on. Let it go. Walk away from those things that we've done. Walk away from that guilt. And maybe, just maybe, some of us need to get junk out of our life, out of our house, out of my office at work, worst yet, out of my closet at home. We need to get rid of all that clutter. We need to declutter our space and let go of old things so that new things can move in. And we need to realize and understand fully that everything we have is energy. There is energy in all of it. It's not just energy in people. It's energy in pews. It's energy in everything that we have in our home and in our offices. And we need to be careful what energy we bring into our space. And if there's something there that brings you a bad memory or brings up something, I don't care if your great-grandmother gave it to you. If it's a bad memory, get rid of it. Get that energy out of your life and out of your house. And some of you might get some messages while you're waiting to write down on your piece of paper of something you need to get rid of. If you do, write that down, remembering that it's energy. And the more we declutter, the more we allow for new. The more we can have the new stuff that's coming. The things that don't represent us any longer need to be gone. The less room there is for my authentic self to find expression is when there's so much junk around me that I can't find that expression. Let it go. Let that release take place. All of us want our new. Walk away from those thoughts, those feelings, those attitudes, those perceptions, values, beliefs, fears, all those doubts that we have. Put them to the side. Move forward into what's new, putting those things away so that we can step forward into our new by walking away from the old. On your sheet of paper, some of you are going to write one thing, and that's perfect. Some of you are going to be like me, and you're going to know that you might need another piece of paper. That's also perfect. Some of you might find, like I did one year, that I have nothing to write down. Now, I wanted to think to myself, that's because you're doing so well. No, it just meant that I had too much I needed to work with before I could put them on that list. So I made my list later and burned it at home. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, depending on how your fire alarm systems work. But I did, and I did set off the alarm, so it's all okay. But you might find that you have nothing you want to write down today. Maybe while you're in your time of reflection, instead of getting things you need to leave, you get things you need to walk to. If you get that, just slide that piece of paper in your pocket. Don't toss that one in the fire. Use that as your reminder of where you're headed and what you're going to next. Think about what it is. Think about what you want to walk away from. Affirm that you will release your thoughts and that you'll release the beliefs that no longer serve your best and your highest good. Walk away. I want us to take just a moment again in silence. No music, no nothing. 2 minutes for you to write anything on that piece of paper that you want to write. Anything that you're being led to put on that piece of paper. So this morning we acknowledge that divine love expresses in, as, and through each one of us. We are constantly creating and co-creating with God. So as you take a moment to step away from what you're walking from, what are you walking to? Where is it that you're going with this next year? What is it that you're looking for? And to address the elephant in the room, some people felt it necessary to walk away from here. My friends, that's okay. You are here because you are exactly where you're supposed to be at this moment, at this time, period. Whatever it is you need to walk away from, you need to walk away to something else. And one of the things I want us to walk away to is simply grace. Grace for yourself, grace for those around you, grace that we can show to others. That is the love that we've been talking about and singing about. Everyone is on their individual journey. And as they go through that journey, there'll be times where they get off the path that we're on. Perfectly great. They're on their journey. You stick with yours and stay where you are. You stay on your journey, moving forward until you're told that there's something different for you to do. What do you want to see in your life? What do you want to see in this church? And if I can close with one thought, it's wherever you are in all of that, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with what you're looking at. And as you walk away, remember to walk to something and get your soul ready, because what's coming next is going to be huge. Get ready, my soul.